Understanding that the brain's main function in life is to keep you safe. It's not for you to have an amazing life. It actually wants you to have the most mediocre life it probably can, because it wants you to stay safe.
Welcome. Today's guest is David Edmonds, an ontological leadership coach and human behavior specialist who believes real leadership starts with identity, not strategy. After 2 decades leading his own business, he now helps leaders move beyond performance pressures and reconnect with purpose. He's the author of Becoming You and the creator of the Fulfillment Framework. You became a coach to help people, but no one told you how to build the business behind it. Welcome to Coach as Entrepreneur, the show for coaches building real businesses with systems, strategy, and heart. Build the systems, serve your clients, and support your family. David, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, good to be here.
In the intro, you are an ontological leadership coach. Can you kind
Yes.
of break that down just a little bit for me and for all of our
Yeah,
listeners?
absolutely. So where my focus is on the mindset of people, ontological coaching is about who you're being in the world. So if you're fearful, if you're worried, if you're apprehensive, you're going to take different decisions than if you're positive, if you're future looking. It can be exactly the same circumstances, but how you view the problem is gives you different solutions to it. So for me, when I'm talking to people who have got challenges, positive and negative challenges, I always hear those challenges as a symptom rather than something to be dealt with. And what my work does is we dig deeper to find out what it is about you that is holding you back from getting to that next level that you want your business, career, leadership to get to.
Okay. I love that because I feel like, often you can just kind of get lost or distracted by this top level, just the problem and just try to, like if you get a cut, you just want to take care of that cut. But there
Yeah.
might be some deeper issue at hand. So you really try to dig deep to understand where is the core of the issue that's kind of creating these symptoms, right?
Yeah. I mean, basically, most problems that people have are driven by fear. And it's a lack of awareness around what that fear is and why that fear is there that keeps
Hmm.
people stuck. So, the first part of my coaching process is to dig a little bit deeper and find out what it is that's driving all of your decisions. Because people believe that they have free will, people believe they're making choices in a very narrow spectrum,
Mm.
and they don't see the possibilities outside of that spectrum. And that
Mm.
spectrum is guided by their fears, what it is they'll do anything to avoid, and their needs. What is it they need to feel good about life? So, for example, if you're terrified of rejection, you will not be willing to take that next step, but the brain might perceive will have you be rejected. But equally, you'll crave the recognition of doing something. So we get stuck in this weird world where what we want, we're also terrified of having. And so we come up with this strategy to try and understand it and compensate for it. So, what makes us successful up to a point? There becomes a point, and especially in leadership, what got you to where you are is going to stop you getting to where you want to go. And that place that you need to go into is uncertainty, not knowing,
Huh.
tackling your fears. And the brain really doesn't want to go there, and it'll make up every excuse under the sun. And I'm sure
Mm.
your listeners will have had this where they know what they should do. They'll create something
Mm.
they're really excited about that they want to do, but then instantly they'll come up with all the good reasons why they can't do it. And
Mhm.
that is just your brain in action. That's your brain trying to keep you safe. It's an amygdala response. So most decision making, when we're within our comfort zone, it's completely different. But when we're outside
Yeah.
our comfort zone, comes from fear. And as soon as fear gets triggered, that part of the brain, the amygdala part of the brain, the flight freeze response kicks in and stops
Mhm.
us dead.
It's interesting because what I was thinking about is a common problem that I've had, especially when I was starting my own business, is I want to start my own business. I want to build it. I want to market it, but I was afraid to tell people about it, to post
Mm,
online about it, to, create the marketing assets, right? Especially when you're doing kind of a solo business or you're just building it up. A lot of the business relies on your personal branding to build it at the beginning. And I knew what I needed to do, but I was afraid of it. And so I kept creating other projects, other things I needed to do besides just talking about what I'm doing, creating content to, talk about it and create visibility for myself. Because there's a fear of being judged for
Mhm.
like, oh, what are you doing? Or, what if I fail? Actually, I think that's a common problem, like a lot of solo, but also coaches face as well, is
Mhm.
especially at the beginning of kind of putting yourself out there and creating opportunities by creating visibility and awareness for yourself, right?
Absolutely. So most people's go-to place is to do what is secure, to do what is
Mm.
safe, to do what probably worked before in the past. And when people reach their uncomfort zone, what they do is they spread out. So rather than pushing through it, what they do is they do a lot more of what they're already doing,
Yeah.
and they get busy. And it's that old phrase, isn't it? The ultimate side of madness, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And that's what we find ourselves doing. And we tweak it and we try and shift it. But the real juice of life, the life
Hmm.
you really want for yourself, lives on the other side of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so it takes a big person to push themselves into that area, because there's, as a culture in the West in particular, but I think throughout the world, we've been taught that failing is bad. Failure is something to be avoided at all costs. But there's another word for failure, it's learning.
Mm.
And if we don't fail, we don't learn. If we don't
Yeah.
fail, we don't grow. And so with my clients, I actively set them up to fail, because they learn from it. That ceiling rises, they grow. Next time they do it better. How many things, people who are terrified of public speaking, the first time they do it, it's terrifying for them. The second time, a little bit better. By the time they've done
Mm.
it 100 times, it just becomes within their comfort zone and it's not a problem. And so
Right.
for me, the secret of life as a whole, definitely in leadership and in coaching, is we have to always be a little bit uncomfortable. If my clients come to me and tell me everything's perfect and everything's working great, I hear that as a massive breakdown, because
Mm.
that to me is they're not trying, they're not pushing
Okay.
themselves.
So I have a question then, because I think one of the hardest things is to practice what you preach. So how are you doing? What is the thing that you're uncomfortable with today?
So, two things with me that I learned taking coaching, going through the coaching process, that before I did it, I had no idea. I would have not associated them with myself at all. Is
Mm.
who I know myself to be is a quitter. So when the going gets tough, I give up on it. And the other thing is that I get embarrassed very easily. I'm not very good with rejection. And so I procrastinated for a long time about writing a book,
Okay.
because do you know what? You're putting yourself out there. It's a little bit like you with your podcast. You're putting yourself out there to be shot down. And so I fell into the world of trying to create the perfect thing. And then it's
Hmm.
really interesting the stories you start to tell yourself to try and make sense of why you're not doing what you know you should be doing. But I have a coach. Why do I have a coach? Because my coach is that separate set of eyes that can see what I'm doing. When you're in it, it's that old phrase, you can't see the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
You need that separate person who can come along and tell you what you already know. I think my biggest bit of advice to any wannabe coach, or any coach full stop, is get yourself a coach.
I've heard that
It
very often from other guests that if you don't have a coach, if you're a coach and you don't have a coach, it doesn't make sense because you know the power of having a coach and how it helps.
Absolutely. And so my coach helped me through my stuff to get me
Hmm.
to the point where I actually published the book. And it's like all these things. Once you actually push yourself through it, it's never as bad as you imagine it.
Yeah.
Many times have you catastrophized over an event, a something, only to find on the other side nothing bad happened. And so it's just the brain. One of the things I'm really passionate about, and it's great for something like this to promote it, is that It's understanding that the brain's main function in life is to keep you safe. It's not for you to have an amazing life. It actually wants you to have the most mediocre life it probably can, because it wants you to stay safe. And so, how does it keep you safe? It's constantly referring to the past. This
Mm,
happened last time, so it'll probably happen again. This went wrong last
mm,
time, so avoid it. Don't do it. And so your brain ends up using you rather than you using your brain.
mm.
And that's what this work does. It teaches you how to use your brain so you can get the results that you really want, so you can get your life to that next level, push yourself outside the comfort zone and keep on growing, because it's a rule of nature. If you don't grow,
Yeah.
you stagnate and die.
Yeah. That's so true. Like if we're not developing ourselves, if we don't continue to, build our businesses or develop our skills, if we're not, working out our muscles, right? It's just
Mm.
going to kind of degrade and die, right? We really dove really deep into your coaching styles. Before we go any further though, I'd love to kind of just
Mm.
get a quick introduce your background. How did you even get into coaching? Because
All right.
no one grew up, thinking I want to become a coach. So, how did you get into this coaching
Absolutely.
world?
Two big influences were two very good friends of mine. One got into the coaching world offering Dale Carnegie courses. He was a Dale Carnegie trainer, Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. Very much a product of its age, but because of what he did, he got access to certain benefits. And so in the late 90s, he got some tickets for a Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within, which I went along to. Absolutely loved it. The man's amazing. The
Yeah.
course was amazing. I then did other Tony Robbins courses, which were
Okay.
fantastic. Got a lot from them. I was using them in a way to improve what I already did. However, I had another friend who is a coach, and I had a reoccurring cycle in relationships. They lasted about 7 years. Started wonderful, 7 years later, fell apart. Obviously, not my fault, always somebody else's fault. And he could see this pattern that I had. And so he had been along and taken some coaching at this organization, and he was encouraging me to go along. And I was, oh no, that's for weak minded people. I don't need that sort of thing. And then yet another relationship came to an end, and he flipped at that point. And so he came to me and he said, right, I've booked you on the course, I've paid for it, and I'm coming on the course with you. Whole weekend, 4 days, this course, 4 days of my life I thought I was never going to get back. And I went along, sat at the back of the room, 200 people, thought, be Mr. Gray, get through it, fulfill my commitment, get on with my life. And
Mm,
within an hour, this course had blown me away. There was a distinction that they had about how we listen, and how
mm,
we listen through a filter of our own insecurities. And when I applied that filter to my life, I could see how the things that were being said were just things that were being said. What was having the impact was how I interpreted them and what I made them mean about me. And as soon as I got the chance to be in control of that, for me
mhm.
to decide how I was going to show up, have my brain use me, it changed
Yeah.
everything. So up to that point, I had had a thriving architectural and design business, which I
Mm,
started in '92. It was okay. It earned me lots of money, and I vaguely enjoyed it, but I can't say I
mm,
was passionate about it. I trained with this organization, took all their classes, all their courses. At the end of it, they said, you obviously really enjoy this stuff. You're good at it. Would you want to train to be one of our coaches? So I spent 3 years with them training whilst doing my architectural business at the same time. I then had a choice to make as to whether I was going to continue with it or not. And for personal reasons, I decided not to continue with them. And the same person who introduced me to coaching got me my first client. A very scary moment, because it's one thing to coach with a big organization behind you, but to show up as you
yeah.
was a completely different thing. So for about 3 years, I coached and carried on with my architectural business side by side. And then, as you do, I was coaching a client who had a big decision to make, and he wasn't fully committing to what it was he wanted to do. And I came off that call and I thought, I'm not fully committing. I'm
Mm,
keeping one foot in architecture, one foot in coaching, not really committing to either. And so I decided at that moment I was going to fully commit to coaching. Closed down my architectural business, took a 75% pay cut to do it, and focused fully on coaching. And I love coaching. It is an
Hmm.
amazing way to contribute to people. It's an amazing way to contribute to the world. And
Yeah.
it's quite funny because people ask me, what do I do for a living? What do I do for work? And I get a bit
Hmm.
stumped because I don't count coaching as work. It's just
Hmm.
something I love doing. And I think so. I think that whatever it is in life, I think one of the things I try to help my clients do is find their passion, find what
Hmm.
it is they want to do beyond surviving. And this is where
I
my
love that.
what you mentioned at the beginning there, that my fulfillment program comes in.
Hmm. Yeah. It's funny because you're not the first coach who's told me they took a massive pay cut when they left their corporate first career to become a coach. And so the people who become coaches, you never become a coach because you're in it for the money. And so that's why I also love to talk with coaches and to work with coaches because in general, I would say 95% of the coaches I've met are just genuinely wonderful, caring people. So you had your own architecture firm, you got introduced into coaching, you were doing coaching halfway in, halfway out, you pulled the trigger and you just jumped straight in. How was the first year of coaching for you when you went full time?
That's a brilliant question. So I was very lucky that I had some amazing initial clients who helped me a lot in referring me on to other people and also getting me involved in their organizations. I think the biggest problem beyond creating clients that new coaches have in particular, and I think this applies to any business, not just coaching, is charging. I had a whole disempowering conversation in my head that if coaching's so fantastic, if coaching can help so many people, is it right to charge for it? And also valuing yourself
Mm.
as to how much you charge. And I did some work with a brilliant coach who helps new coaches, a guy called Rich Litvin. He worked hard changing my perception of myself and how I charge.
Mm.
So, coming from what was in effect a consultancy background, everything was hourly rates, how much you charge per
Right.
hour, which for coaching is totally inappropriate. But many
Mm.
coaches still charge on an hourly rate. What you're charging for is the difference you can make. And how much you get paid is based upon the impact you have with your clients.
Right. So it's a results-based approach versus how many hours did we spend together?
Absolutely. Yeah. My average coaching session's 2 hours, but I know coaches who only coach for 15 minutes.
Hmm.
Everyone's got their own style. Everyone's got their own way of doing things. But it's not that 2 hours that people are paying for. What they're paying for is all the knowledge and work I've put in over the last 15 years that enables them to have breakthroughs, that enables them to have insights into their behavior. And that for them is beyond value.
Right.
So I think some coaches fall down is they actually don't value what it is they're doing
Mm.
and therefore find it difficult to charge a good fee for what they're doing.
So what do you think is the gap that they don't value what it is that they're doing? Because I would say like coaches are the people who should recognize what they're
Mm.
doing is valuable, right?
But coaches are very good at recognizing it in others. And it comes back to what I was saying earlier. This is why you having a coach is so important because this is a personal thing. I've probably got 250 clients on my mailing list.
Mm.
And
Okay.
there are times when things go a bit quiet. Just want to reach out to them. And remember my fear of rejection. I found sending an email out to people who I already knew incredibly difficult. I'd write the
Mm.
email and then there'd be some reason why I didn't send it. It wasn't quite the right time. Or you can't send it on a Friday because they're not going to be around till Monday. I'd always find an excuse because for me, sending an email out asking for help was
Mm.
terrifying because what happens if no one replies? And
Fear of rejection.
yeah, what my coach did is he highlighted what I already knew And then we live life aligned with our word. If we say we're going to do something, we do it. The one person who we lie and cheat most with in the world is ourselves. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then we don't do it. And then we get into this weird world where we are then making excuses to ourselves as to why we haven't done what we said we were going to do for ourselves. It all gets getting a bit weird, but we think it's normal.
Yeah.
And so I'd come off a phone call having committed to my coach what I'm going to do, and I'd do it.
Hmm.
And invariably, the results were brilliant. People are only too willing to help. So this is why this stuff is so important. Understanding how this amazing bit of kit between our ears works. Self-awareness. Understanding that if you feel scared, it's not bad. It's actually good.
Yeah.
Because I think, as Tony Robbins says, if you feel scared, get excited. You're about to learn something new. And so it's just reframing how we feel, because it's all about feelings at the end of the day. It's all
Yeah.
about feelings. Feelings are what get us into action. Feelings are what stop us from getting into action.
I just had this image of, when you work out, you're putting your muscles under stress. You're putting your body into this stress state so that you can build the muscles and continue to build them up so that they can grow. I guess that's what we're doing with our brains when we're putting our brains in an uncomfortable position. We're forcing it into this stressful position so that it can actually start to flex and to grow and develop itself, because it has to deal with these difficult, uncomfortable situations. It needs to create new paths to find the solutions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's down to the quality of questions that we ask ourselves. So if you ask yourself a good quality question, your brain will give you a good quality answer. If you say to yourself, if you are constantly asking yourself how you can't do stuff, guess what? Your brain will find lots of good reasons how you can't do it.
Can we try to apply this for coaches, because this show is geared for coaches? So what are some of the questions that coaches should be asking themselves about building their businesses?
I think the first port of call that every coach has got to have is, what is he contributing? What are you giving the person you're speaking to in front of you? I see coaching, this is a personal opinion, I see coaching as sort of three tiers. So there are lots and lots of coaches out there that will coach feelings. I want to feel braver. I want to feel more confident. I want to feel more loved. Then there's the second tier, and bizarrely the most profitable tier, which are people who coach successful people to be better at what they're doing. How to write a better CV, how to be more controlling, how to deal with difficult people. Things that they're already good at, but they're just improving them. They're making them better at it.
Yeah.
People love that because they don't have to dig too deep. It's very much problem orientated, not cause orientated. And then
Right.
there are people like myself who are transformational coaches. What I want for my clients is for them to create something right now when they're speaking to me feels impossible. What I want for my clients is when I speak to them in a year's time, they say something along the lines of, I did not see this coming. What I'm doing today wasn't even on my radar. I wasn't even aware of it. And why do I love that? Because guess what? That's what happened to me. Before I took coaching, I had no thought. I didn't even really realize coaching was something you could do and earn money from, other than these top guys who I thought were showmen more than anything. But I am the work in action, because 10
Right.
years ago, if you had told me I'd be doing what I'm doing now and earning the sort of money I'm earning now from what I'm doing, it just had been impossible. It just wasn't even on my radar.
I just to kind of, you're doing the coaching, you've done the work, and you don't have to answer, but can you give us a ballpark of what it is you're kind of, the range you're earning?
So when I first started out, it was quite funny. I was charging £350, UK pounds,
Okay.
for 5 sessions. It was, the thing that was quite funny was that in my previous work, I used to charge £75 an hour at that stage. And so I was still charging, in effect, subconsciously. I didn't even realize I was doing it. My coach pointed it out to me. I was still charging £75 an hour. What you have to practice what you have to get better at is A, saying the figure that you want, whatever that is, it's different for everybody, and being ready. I think this is the most critical bit. You've got to be prepared for people to say no without making it mean anything.
Mm.
Because literally, there's a great book, it was written by a Nobel Prize winner, Fast Slow Thinking. And in that book, it highlights that when people are asking for a fee for something, it really doesn't matter how much that initial figure is. They will always say it's expensive. So if you say it's $100, people will go, "Oh, that's expensive." If you say it's 1,000, that's expensive. If you say 100,000, they'll say that's expensive because they've got no point of reference as to how much this work
Right.
costs. And so you've got the top guys like Tony Robbins who charges $1 million for his coaching and coaches presidents and film
Yeah.
stars. My rates now are for a year's coaching with me is £15,000.
Okay.
So that'll be what? That's about, I don't know, $17,000 for a year's coaching. For my 90-day program, because I think you need a menu. I think as a coach, you need a menu of services. You need things people can pick from that fits for them. My rate for that is around £7,000, which is around $8,000. But I also have 5 scholarship places each year where people
Hmm.
pay nothing.
Okay.
And they are ones that I generally give to people who are struggling, young people. I love working with young people. Young people are
Hmm.
just the best. Their brains are so ready to accept something new. And there's a phrase in life that as you get older, you get wiser. Like hell do you? As you get older, you just get more stuck that you think you know the answers. And so I don't work with people who think they know the answers because what's the point? I work with
Yeah.
people who are curious and interested and willing to play with things, willing to explore things. And
Yeah.
younger people are just more willing to do that.
Hmm. The Walt Whitman quote of "Be curious, not judgmental."
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. And in my specialist area, which is leadership, when I first started coaching, like most coaches, you just say yes to everybody. But as you go through the process, you start to develop what it is that you want to contribute, the sort of impact you want to have, the sort of people you like to work with, the sort of
Right.
areas that excite you. And I love working with leaders. I particularly like working with people who are aspiring to be leaders
Mm.
because these people can go out and have a massive impact.
Right.
And that impact that they have is part of the ripples that I put out in the world. These people go out and do amazing things. That is a reflection of me. That is an expression of who I am. And so that's why I love working with these sorts of people. But, everyone's different. It's finding that some people like working with sports people, some people like working with children, some people like working.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's different. It's find what it is that excites you. The money follows. Money isn't an outcome for me. Money is a measure.
Mm.
If you've got £0 in the bank, it's because you're not contributing. If you've got lots of money in the bank, it's because you're contributing massively. And that's so I always ask people who I work with to focus on contribution. One of the things that I'm passionate about is I want to live in a world where people ask, how can I help? Rather than what's in it for me.
The state of the world is something I think about a lot, just because, yeah, with young boys, I have 2 boys. I just think about where are we going as a society? What does the future look like with technology, with social media? And what you're saying is true, because most people these days are looking out for, themselves and not
Mm,
caring of others, or like, it's a little sad sometimes, but I do have hope. And I think that's also like why I feel like coaches are so important, because
mm,
like the work that a lot of coaches do, and I'd love to hear your experience, but the work that coaches do impacts not just that individual, just themselves, because that person, the work that you do with them impacts the people around them, right? So in their
absolutely.
workplace, in their home, right? So I'm curious, do you have any stories that come to mind of your clients that you've worked with where you've seen just that transformation that you'd like to share?
I have. So I've got quite a few, but there was one that was quite satisfying and quite amusing, which is I've actually coached two British politicians from each side of the spectrum. And in the UK, we were going through this whole Brexit thing, which I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys have heard about. And we were negotiating our relationship with Europe. And one of the people I was coaching was heavily involved in the negotiations. And at that particular time, part of what was being talked about was how we dealt with Europeans in the UK and how Europe was going to deal with UK citizens in Europe. Because up to that point,
Mhm.
you could go anywhere.
You didn't become a coach to be a marketer. But if you want to build a sustainable business, you need a system that works for you while you're coaching. Coach Ops is designed to help you go from unpredictable referrals to a reliable marketing system without it feeling pushy or salesy. If you're ready to build something systematic, visit kyber5.com/coach ops.
And both sides were sitting on the fence waiting for the other side to decide what they were going to do. And then they were going to mirror whatever the other side did. And so in my conversations with the person I was quoting, I just mirrored what I would say to a person. So for me, it's about you being true to you. You choose what sort of person you want to be and you
Right.
act according to that. What everybody else does is up to them, but you be in control of you. Because as soon as you're in reaction to other people, you
Mm.
have no choice over the matter. You're just being
Yeah.
controlled. And so I don't give advice, but what I talked about was what sort of country does the UK want to be?
Mm.
Do we want to be a country that is pushed around? Do we want to be a country that is led by others? Do we want to be the sort of country that only does the right thing if other people do it? Or do we want to be leaders in the world
Mhm.
and show how to behave? Because that's just who we are. And the following week, I was quite surprised to hear on the British news them say that the British delegation had decided that they were going to choose how they were going to treat European nationals, and that Europe would do whatever Europe does. That was like part of the first block in starting to put together something. So
Mm.
it's this is why I love working with leaders. You can have a big impact. Now you know what, I may be reading more into it than there was, but it was a very
Sure.
nice coincidence.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is, we never really know how much impact we have on other people's lives. The interactions that we have with people just passing by or making a comment, it can make or break a person's day sometimes. And so, very often, like when a leader works with a coach, that leader is getting better and it's creating a positive impact, right?
Absolutely. There's a brilliant book out. I can't remember the people who wrote it, but the book's called Scaling Leadership. And there's a
Hmm.
brilliant phrasing that, which is that a leader is actually the bottleneck of how successful a business can be. And that bottleneck is based on how much growth the leader is willing to do. So the more
Hmm.
a leader is willing to grow, the bigger impact it has on the business growing. If the leader isn't willing to grow, then he stays stuck. And one of my clients, in a very, very senior position, had this brilliant strategy that had got into where he was in this senior leadership role, which is to
Hmm.
make sure good news stuck with him and that bad news got blamed on somebody else. He wasn't even aware he had this strategy before I started talking to him. And he was actually a
Huh.
bit horrified when he started to see it. But the impact it had on his relationship with his staff was massive.
Yeah.
The impact it had on the organization was massive because it moved the people who worked for him fundamentally didn't trust him. And through our work together, he managed to transform his relationship with his staff, where
Hmm.
within a year, they started actually trusting him and believing him because they knew he had their backs. And so I just love the impact. What I really want to be clear is the magic is never with me. What I
Hmm.
do is I show people a doorway. It's up to that person whether or not they walk through it or not. And it takes a very big and a very brave person to choose to challenge their identity, to challenge everything that's made them successful up to that point. It takes a very brave person to do that. And not everyone can do it. And that's fine. But for those who can, the payoff on the other side is massive.
I've got a quick question for you. For the types of leaders and the ranges that you work with, what do you kind of see as the most common issue for leaders today? What's the most common kind of problem or thing that they face that you see?
This isn't just leaders. It shows up
Hmm?
massively with leaders, but it's literally everyone on the planet. It's fear of getting it wrong. It's fear of not looking good. It's fear of what people are going to say. And it can show up in weird and different ways. I coached one of the top four energy companies in the world,
Mhm.
and his salary was millions and millions of pounds, dollars. He could negotiate deals with prime ministers and presidents. And I must admit, I was thinking to myself, what's he talking to me for? Because superficially, you look at this guy, you think, wow. But,
Right.
I sat down and I did what I do. I'm curious and I'm interested. I listened. And the thing that wasn't working in his life was his personal relationships. His wife
Mm.
was about to divorce him, and he had two children that didn't speak to him at university. And it came up that the thing he couldn't do, this guy who could do all this amazing work, could not tell the people he cared about that he loved them. What he did was he expressed his love by what he could do for them. This needing to do things rather than be vulnerable and say it made him incredibly successful. It's what drove him to be the businessman he was. And so my challenge to him when we finished was that he rang his mum and just said, Mum, just wanted you to know I love you. I don't say it often enough, but I love you. This man who could do this amazing stuff turned into a quivering little child. It was his worst nightmare, his biggest fear.
Mhm.
But to give him his due, he committed to doing it and he did it. And he said on the other side, it was amazing. He said his mum was crying, he was crying. She said she'd been
Right.
waiting her whole life to hear him say it. So fear at whatever it is, whatever level you're at, is calling the
Hmm.
shots. And as a coach, doing some work and finding out what it is you're afraid of. Because how can you push past it until you know what it is your strategy in life is? Until you can do that, it just occurs to you as that's real life. It just occurs to you that's the way things are. And once you've got that distinction, once you know you've got self awareness around, then you can take some ownership of it. You can have some choices around it. But like me, before I did coaching, to me, it was everybody else's fault. To me, it was just unlucky. But until you can take some ownership of something and be self aware enough to go, do you know what? This is me. This is down to me. I can't control the world. I can't control other people. The only thing in life I can control is how I show up, my thoughts and my feelings. And another good recommendation for me for a book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's only a short book. I recommend all your readers, all your listeners read it. It's about a psychiatrist's experience of being in Auschwitz during the Second World War. Whilst being in Auschwitz, he had no control over what he ate, where he slept, what conditions he was in. He didn't even have any control over whether he lived or died. But it's his story about how he always maintained control about what happened in here in his brain. It doesn't matter what you do. I just want people to have a choice, a real choice around what they do. Not it be some sort of default response, a
Hmm.
reaction to things. I want people to respond to things. I want them to they have a say, they have a choice about their future. If you're a new coach starting out, it feels like you have no control. But the reality is, it's a choice. You're choosing to put yourself in that position. That's you being in control of you. I'm going to choose to do this. I'm going to choose to play the game full out. What is it that's stopping me? I'm terrified of rejection. Do you know what have I got to do to be a success? I've got to put myself in front of rejection, or at least the perceived rejection.
I'm curious to know your experience of starting out, so you went from starting and charging 350 for 5 sessions to working with politicians and, top level executives. How did you go from 350 to top level executives and politicians, government officials?
It's as my coach told me, it's about collecting no's. You have to
Mm.
be willing to ask the question. You have to be willing to have people say no. If you're terrified of people saying no because you make it mean something about you, and if you never ask the question, you never get said no to.
Mm.
And that is what the brain wants. The brain wants to avoid fear. It wants to avoid pain. It would rather keep you mediocre and avoid what it
Right.
fears than help you become something amazing, but have to tackle its fears. So this is why
Yeah.
we need to take control of this piece of kit rather than it being in control of us.
Is there anything that you do regularly to help you to control and put yourself in the driver's seat of your mind versus just letting it kind of sit in default for safety?
It's self-awareness. Yeah. So if I'm procrastinating, it's looking for red flags. As you go through these
Mm.
processes, you identify red flags. Procrastination is a massive one for me. If I'm procrastinating, that's a red flag. I always stop. Okay, what am I afraid of? But it comes back really to what we spoke about earlier. It's having a coach. If you really want to get where you want to go, it's finding the right coach for you. Coaching is a relationship business. My belief is you can't just coach off a shelf. You need to speak to them. You need to make sure they're aligned with your values. They're aligned with what you want to achieve. And so there are lots of people who want to work with me that I say I'm not the right coach for you because
Mhm.
what they want to achieve isn't aligned with who I am. So it's go out, find the right coach for you, someone who's going to make you accountable for what it is you say you're going to do, and start to get a new relationship with your word. Don't promise things you're not going to do. If you say, I'm going to go down the gym for an hour, well, do you know what? Say 15 minutes initially. I'd rather you did and fulfilled what you say. Because if your brain doesn't believe you when you say you're going to do something, when you say, I'm going to go on a diet and I'm not going to eat any cream cakes for a month, and then an hour later, someone comes along with a cream cake, and your brain goes, yummy, because all we're focused on is short-term fulfillment, short-term gratification, then your brain, when you say, I'm going to do something, your brain goes, yeah, okay. No, you're not.
Mhm.
So what fear does is fear focuses on the short term. Fear drives us to solve issues now that occur to us as dangerous. Yeah. And one thing I'd just quickly like to share with you, because it's a really important distinction, is the difference between fear and danger.
Okay.
Because most people combine the two, and they're two separate
Right.
things.
Naturally.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So danger is there's a bus about to hit me and I need to get out the way. This is when your amygdala, the fight, flight, freeze response, is brilliant because it makes decisions in split seconds and gets you out of the way of the bus. The frontal cortex, the thinking human side of your brain, will sit there and go, oh, there's a bus coming. I wonder how fast it's going. Whack, you're dead. Yeah. So the amygdala is really important. We don't want to get rid of it. But where it
Right.
gets out of control is the human brain has developed so much that we've got this amazing thing called an imagination. And so we can imagine things going wrong. And so I can get my clients in a safe room with no traffic around to imagine being hit by a bus, and it promotes exactly the same feelings as a bus really about to hit you. All
Mhm.
they're doing is telling themselves a little story in their head. The brain can't tell
Right.
the difference between reality and a story. And so what stops most coaches isn't the reality, it's the story they tell themselves. And the story they tell themselves is all based on their fears. And the story is designed to stop them confronting their fears because the brain equates it with danger. Does that make sense?
It's very interesting because I think that our imagination is very powerful. It allows us to convince ourselves of things that may not be true all the time. And so the other side of the fear thing, right, of the fear and danger part is when I've have conversations with coaches and they are actually I had one just before this call, right? She was a former pharmaceutical executive and she became a coach and she's like, I'm not going to work with pharmaceutical executives or leaders. I just don't want to work with that industry. She's kind of burned out with that. And so she wanted to work with anybody else. What she realized though is the other people, her example was somebody was started crying because they were talking about their relationships and she just couldn't, she's just like, what have I gotten myself into? It wasn't something important. It just was, in her mind, she thought that was the kind of client she wanted to work with. She had convinced herself this is the type of person I should work with. And then she realized I really enjoy working. When she started doing it again, she's working more now with pharmaceutical executives. She's realized I actually love working with pharmaceutical executives. And it's kind of just funny because one part was because she was burned out, but the other part was just she thought the grass is going to be greener on the other side. If I work with these other people, this is going to be better for me and better for them. And then she
Do you know what
realized,
what you're describing there is a brilliant example. So what she had was a
well,
filing error. If you imagine two filing cabinets, one with your future and one with your past, what everyone on the planet does is when something goes wrong, when something happens that we don't like, we don't file it in the past, we file it in the future. And
oh,
so what we end up doing is we live into a future of our past. I don't like pharmaceutical people. Right, where does that go? Does that go into the past? No, we're going to pop that into our future. So the future she was living into was I don't like pharmaceutical people. What's the
right.
impact of that? A, it keeps her safe because she's had a bad experience of working with these people. The
Hmm.
downside is it stops her having an impact on an industry that she probably understands. She's probably got lots of contacts in. So the cost of living into that future is huge. So what
Masks,
I
right.
like to get people to do is to try and empty that filing cabinet out called the future as much as possible and put the things that are in there where they belong in the past. Because here's the weird thing. We think it's what's happened that has the impact on us. And this people really struggle to get their head around. It is never what happened that has the impact. It's what we make it mean. We are meaning making machines. Something
Mm-hmm.
happens, we make it mean something. Then where those two circles cross, that becomes our truth. The meaning is totally fabricated. It's all based on our filter of how we see the world. So
Yeah,
if
it's
we
our
can get rid of
imagination
the
again.
yeah, if we can get rid of the meaning and just focus on what actually is happening, we can behave differently. And so an example that I use with this is if you imagine that you had never seen fire before, and I came
Mm.
along and I lit a little fire. What do you think you're going to want to do? All these beautiful little colours and funny shapes. What do you want to do in that situation? Never seen it before.
You might touch it.
You're going to touch it. And at
Yeah.
that point, what's going to happen? You're going to get burnt.
Yeah.
At that moment, you have two ways of reacting. You could add meaning to fire. Fire's dangerous. Fire hurts. Don't go near fire. It's bad.
Right.
In which case, you can't use it to light your cave. You can't use it to cook your food. You can't use it to fend off things that are trying to kill you. You lose a whole world of possibilities around fire.
Right.
Or, and that's what you put into your future. Fire's dangerous. You put it back in your past and you learn from it.
Right.
Don't touch fire, it hurts. But you can
Mm-hmm.
put it on a stick, you can use it to cook things with, you can control it, you can do things with it. So, what stops someone using fire, what makes someone fearful of fire, isn't fire, it's the meaning they've attached to it. And this is what stops most people. This is what fear is. It's not what happened, the meaning that they've attached to it that they're trying to
Yeah.
avoid.
The funny thing is that the more conversations I have with coaches, it comes around where a lot of coaches that I've met have said, I started out not working with that industry I came from or that,
Mm,
you know, executive group or whatever. But it's because of bad experiences. And then I've met a few who they realized too late that that's the group that they should have been focusing on because they had such
mm,
deep knowledge. And then a few who have recognized it and then pivoted into it because there's so much, as you know, industry knowledge, their deep network. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that coaches do is trying to pivot away into some other industry or niche instead of focusing on the industry and space that they came from because they have the network, they have the deep
mm.
knowledge. And so it's a really, I think it's probably one of the easiest places to step into for coaches to start working with leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. As a first port of course, when you're starting out, I think it's really good. But equally, the reverse can be equally problematic. Because if you're living into a world of this is the only people I know, these are the only people I can speak to, then you're
Right.
again cutting out a whole world of possibility. So this is why my focus when I'm talking to people isn't on what they do, why they're doing it. It's that Simon Sinek golden circle. Because one of the things that I do is we clear out as much as possible. We never fully clear it out, but we clear out that future filing cabinet as much as possible. And so everything that has controlled someone's decisions in life, we have basically taken away. And they're like, well, I don't know what I want to do. They see that as a problem. I see that as a gift. That's a beautiful place to get to, because guess what? We can create something now. We can start to put something together. And so what that gives you is possibility, because when you're living your life from fear, it constrains and reduces the possibilities you have. Once you take that fear away, knew existed,
Right.
come to hand. A great client of mine, one of the things that he was terrified of was being center of attention. So what he did was he was thinking in this business, there was a great opportunity to do YouTube clips to promote what it was he was doing. But initially he was like, I'm not going on camera. I can't do that. What if people don't like me? What
Right.
if I sound stupid? We all think our voices sound silly when we hear them back, no matter who you
Hmm.
are. He was like, this is what I need to do. So he went on a few training courses. He learned how to do it. The first ones, rubbish. They were really bad. If he hadn't done those first ones, all the great ones that came afterwards would never have happened. And now
Exactly.
he's a bit of an internet sensation. So it always comes from trying to generate as many possibilities as you can. And then what we then want to do, once we've got all these possibilities, especially with high achievers, is they want to try and service all the possibilities in case they pick the wrong one. And so then
Yeah.
the trick for me is trying to get them to rein them in. So with my
Yeah.
clients, I want them to push themselves. I want them to dream big, but I only want them to take little 15% steps to get there.
Yeah.
So it's about selecting the opportunity that lets you express yourself the best.
Prioritizing, creating a roadmap, and then, being specific about where you're going, right?
Yeah, and testing it. One of the things that I was very bad at when I first started doing this was putting measures in place, not goals, not things you have to achieve, but measures, just to see, is what I'm doing working? And then if it's not working as well as you'd like, then you adjust it, you change it. You don't judge yourself by it. It's not good or bad. It's just, is it working the way I want it to? Yes or no? So putting measures in place, how many clients you got this year? Well, you know what? If you said I wanted 50 and I've only got 5, not right, it's not wrong. It's just, it's not what you wanted. So what can I do
Yeah.
next year that's going to shift that? Where can I challenge myself? What is it I'm avoiding? What is it I'm afraid of that I'm not doing? Because this is the weird thing. The vast majority of people who I speak to know what they should be doing. They're just not doing it. That's the juice of this stuff for me. That's the interesting thing, because that's the thing that I focus on. What it is that's stopping people from doing what they know they should do.
I wanted to ask you this one final question before we close, which is, what have you learned about yourself through this process of becoming a coach?
What I learned was how little I knew myself. There was one specific example when my sons were young. One of the mums of their friends came round, and I took an instant dislike to this woman for no reason. She hadn't done anything to me, and I was a bit confused. So my friend who lived next door to me, who was a coach, I subsequently went up to him and said, this weird thing happened. This lady walked in. She didn't even say anything, and I just took an instant dislike to her. He said to me, what normally happens, that person is mirroring something about you that you don't like. And what I got present to when I was taking coaching was what she did as she walked up the drive. She was looking at what car I was driving. She was looking at what watch I was wearing. She was looking at the quality of the furnishings of the house. She was being incredibly judgmental. And what I learned about me in that moment was I am incredibly judgmental. It's a side of me that I do not like. And as with all this stuff, as soon as you find it out, you get a choice with it. All the time, it's
Right.
just this virus in the background whirring away, and we don't know it's there. We can't do anything about it. And that's why, for me, this work is so important. And the one thing I just would recommend to everyone, I can't recall if I've recommended this to yourself yet, is Have you ever read the user manual for your brain? No, because there isn't one. This thing's there. It's amazing, but we have no idea how it works. The book that I would recommend everyone reads, it's the nearest thing I've come to a user manual for the brain that's really easy to understand, because this is an incredibly complex piece of kit, is a book called The Chimp Paradox by a chap called Professor Steve Peters, who's a psychiatrist. And this book breaks the brain into 3 easy to understand parts. And one of my drives in life is I want this book. He done a children's version that I would love to get into schools, because we teach children all this stuff. But literally, for me, the most important thing, how their brains work, we don't teach them. And so they get fearful of things they don't need to be fearful about. They don't understand why they're getting scared. They don't understand why they're behaving the way they're behaving. Because to them, it's just real life. And what this book does, in a really simple way, is it at least sows the seed of being aware that if you get angry, if you get upset, if you get defensive, if you get happy, why it's happening in here. So it's a brilliant book, and I thoroughly recommend it. No kickbacks to me. I've got no connection with Steve Peters at all. I just love the book.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think that's a fantastic. The kids version I will get for my son. One of the things I love about these conversations is I get new parenting tips on how to help my kids to become better leaders and better people, which is a nice side effect of
Superb.
you know.
How old are they?
Yeah, 10 and 5.
The 5-year-olds are probably a bit young. The 10-year-old is
Yeah.
brilliant for it. I think the children's book between sort of 9 and 13, it's absolutely brilliant for. Over 13, I think they can read the adult book. But yeah, totally recommend it for your 10-year-old. It's a brilliant book.
So I'll find that after this. David, I really appreciate your time today, and I'm just very thankful for this opportunity to learn and to speak with you. Before we close, how can people, if they wanted to get connected with you, how can they get connected?
I'm on LinkedIn. If people are interested, on Amazon, I've got my book there. If you've got an Amazon account, you can get the Kindle version for nothing. They can do that. Or they can have a look at my website, which is Certus Coaching, CERTUS coaching.co.uk. But probably the easiest way is just to type in David Edmonds on LinkedIn. They should be able to find me there.
David,
Superb.
it is a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate it once again. Have a great day and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. I hope it helps people. That's absolutely fantastic.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to stop guessing and start building a marketing system that actually fills your calendar? Head to kyber5.com/coachops and let's get systematic. That's it for today's episode. I hope you grabbed something useful you can actually apply in your business. If you did, leave a comment or share it with a friend. And hit subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you next week.